All right, C++, and we're beginning on page 90. On page 90, we are enhancing our account.h code, where account.h is the source code for our account object, its data members, and member functions. So we are defining in code the data members and the actions, behaviors, tasks of what an account object is capable of doing. So we're enhancing our account class with a name and balance as data members, and a constructor, and a deposit function. And each of those member functions perform validation. Include our string. This is a header file, so we do not include the namespace directive. Class account begin, and we want to find the class account end. We call that in a header file. We have the semicolon as the last character of code. Public, we have our constructor account, and this is an example of a multiple parameter constructor where we are expecting a string to be passed to account name from the driver program, and we're expecting an integer to be passed from the driver program to initialize initial balance. And we're going to be naming and assigning account name to the private data member of type string name. And here's our opening brace and our close brace of our constructor. Now, this is an example where we continue to have processing occur within the body of the constructor. We're going to validate that initial balance. We want to make sure that when an account holder opens an account and deposits an initial balance, we want to make sure that it is valid, that it's greater than 0. So in processing, we're going to double check before we assign our new private data member integer balance from its initialized value of 0 to a new balance value. So we're going to check if initial balance, which was passed to our constructor, is greater than 0, is true, well then we'll allow balance, our data member value, to be reassigned to the value that was passed. Otherwise, the balance will remain at 0. Next, we have the public method. It does not return anything. Deposit, int, and we're expecting an integer to be passed to it of the deposit amount from the driver program. If the deposit amount is greater than 0, then we will allow our balance to be reassigned to the current balance plus this deposit amount. Otherwise, the if statement will not process, and the balance will remain as it currently was. We have public int get balance, where we're expecting the get balance to have only one statement to process, and it's going to return the current value of balance in the data member's balance variable, and it'll return it as an integer to the calling environment, which is your main driver program. We have a public method or function that returns nothing. It sets the name, standard string. We're expecting a string to be passed from the calling environment to set string in the header, and account name will be assigned to that. And name, the name field in this account object will be assigned to that account name. And we have the public standard string get name. We're expecting to return a string get name. We have only one statement, so return the name, and we'll return the current name field for this account as a string back to the calling environment to be perhaps further processed. The account test.cpp program, our driver program then, needs to include IOStream and our account.h file that we create. Remember that that needs to be placed within quotation marks. This is a CPP program, so we can make use of our namespace directive. We have our main method, open and close braces. The processing within, we have an account one reference declared to be of type account class object, where we're going to initialize a string field and initialize an integer field by passing a string and an integer to our header constructor. And we're going to have a reference to a second account class object with a reference name of account2, sending to initialize through the constructor a string, John Blue, and an integer, -7. So we're passing a string and an integer, and sure enough, the account constructor is expecting two parameters, a string to be named, assigned to account name, and an integer to be assigned to initial balance. Further processing takes place in the constructor. We validate the initial balance. The initial balance for Jane Green is 50, which is greater than 0, so account 1 balance will be increased to assigned to 50. And account 2 constructor constructs and instantiates a new class object of a type account with a name assigned John Blue, and we're sending a -7 as an integer to the constructor. Account name will assign and initialize our data member name field to John Blue and initialize the balance. With further processing, if initial balance is greater than 0, it is not. So John Blue's balance will remain at 0. Further processing, we accept input for a deposit amount, validate it, and add it to the existing balance. We print information to verify that the correct balance was updated in each account or not. And we have 3 or 4 different attempts to demonstrate validity of the program. Now we can see in our account 1 that we have a balance field initialized to 0 with initialization taking place within the header. And when we run, we send a name to both accounts, initialize balance to 0, we send a new balance to Jane. We try or attempt to send a -7, it doesn't pass validity, so John Blue's account stays at 0. I expect you to process this on your own and continue